back to another edition of the Daily Memphians Memphis Grizzlies podcast. This is Drew Hill, joined as always by Chris Herrington. It's a big pod. It's a pod we've been waiting to do for a while. We've anticipated this pod would eventually come, and it is here. The Memphis Grizzlies have finally traded Ja Morant, a process that began publicly in January and played out through the end of the trade deadline, and then, kind of continued to go on through the end of the regular season as a conversation, even though they couldn't do anything, and then now to the off season where a deal finally gets done. Ja Morant goes to the Portland Trail Blazers. Incoming is Jeremy Grant and Chris Murray. Chris, do you have any initial thoughts on just the trade itself before we talk Ja or anything else?
Well, I think the meaning of the trade itself is the fact of a trade, not the details of the trade. My sense is that I'm guessing that the Portland deal that happened, I don't know this, I'm guessing that's the first deal they had, even going back to January when they first started looking. It's the first deal they had where they could move Morant out without giving up a draft asset and without taking back more salary going forward than they were sending out. And so I think they decided they're moving forward, turning the page, whatever. They wanted to just move off Morant and go fully into the future. But because they're rebuilding, you don't want to – you would like to get something good back, but at the very minimum, you don't want to give up things that help your rebuild. So they didn't give up a draft pick. They didn't use financial flexibility that they might have going forward. And so I think it was a clean deal they could do that didn't give up anything of future value and enabled them to move forward. And I think they must have concluded that's just the best it's going to get.
The reaction was mixed,
Sure.
Which we all expected. There were some people still in denial to the end that it would happen.
Right.
Which were fans of Ja. And I think for the Grizzlies, if you were to imagine what they're feeling today, I'm sure they wish that the Ja Morant era would have had a different conclusion. But now, once you've reached this point and you've already turned the page and Cam Boozer is in the building, I think you're feeling some relief that
100%.
that this is now in the past, and you can now move forward with the new face of your franchise and start a new chapter of Grizzlies basketball. When you look back at the Ja Morant era, the next-gen era, whatever you want to call it, what's the first thing that comes to mind for you? What will you think about still 5 years from now about the way that the last era played out?
Well, I think that 2021-2022 season is a candidate for best and most enjoyable season in Grizzlies history. I mean, that was a special team that was really exciting and really good and had a lot of promise. And even though the promise was sort of unfulfilled, that season was still an absolute blast. So I certainly remember that. And one of the things I wrote about in February at the trade deadline, and I'm going to get to that in a second, but was that it was sort of, in retrospect, a little bit of a premonition of things to come, because the culmination of that season to me was the We Hear game, the ESPN All Access against Brooklyn. They beat Brooklyn with Kyrie Irving and Kevin Durant. It's national showcase. At the end, Desmond Baines asked, sum this team up in one word, and he says, I need two. We hear, basically, and then the team mobs him, and it's just the whole thing. Ja Morant did not play in that game, and it was sort of, unfortunately, a sign of the absences to come a little bit, or a premonition of it. Before, when you walked in, I had noted to you because, we're in the first full day of NBA free agency, and deals are sort of popping off a little bit. And one of the things that happened this morning was Mike Conley signed with Boston, which I noted you when you came in. And that sort of just Mike coming up this morning in the context of this Ja stuff makes me think of how just weirdly similar this has been to the end of that previous era. It's so similar because if you go back then, the team had decided, okay, this has run its course. It was a little bit less controversial then than it was now, but the franchise decided it's run its course. They had two core players left. Then it was Marc Gasol and Mike Conley, big and a guard. Here it was Jaren Jackson and Ja Morant, a big and a guard. The organization decides, okay, this has run its course. It's time for a rebuild. They make both players available publicly then. This time it was publicly with Morant, but quietly with Jaren. In both cases, they make both players available. They're able to move the big. They can't move the guard, and they decide the deals aren't good enough. We're going to wait till the summer. But everyone knew, could have known, should have known, whatever. It was there to be known that the deal was going to happen in the summer. And so you had the same kind of like slow motion process where by the time Mike Conley got traded, like everyone could have internalized it, right? Certainly the organization had internalized it. People knew it was over. It didn't land us a shock. I guess the Ja thing has been a little bit different with some fans that just didn't want to believe everything that was in front of their face and everything we had been telling them for months. But for me personally, it was like, I imagine somewhat like the organization. Like you'd already gone through your personal processing of the end of the era and the absence and the departure of Ja Morant months before it actually happened, you know?
Yeah. Just to give a little inside baseball here, like we both wrote columns about the end, the trade, the Ja trade, and you know what it means and all that. And I actually wrote the column in January when it was possible that he would get traded. And so in January, I was kind of tasked with figuring out what I wanted to say or what I would remember about the Ja era in Memphis. And I did that, but the tone of that column at first was like, people are going to be really mad today, right? People are going to be furious. And don't get me wrong, there were people that were really mad that Ja got traded. But didn't it feel totally different that it happened now, right, versus the way that you were just laying out?
Yeah.
That it happened in this sort of slow roll, slow motion exit versus had it happened so abruptly that January, whatever day it was in January, I think it was the 9th. January the 9th, Shams puts the report out.
Right.
Hey, the Grizzlies are shopping Ja Morant, and within a month, he's no longer on the team. I think that would have been a totally there would have been a totally different reaction to that. And there probably would have been a different reaction had Ja played at the end of the year and had he been healthy and had he played well. But he didn't. And so I think because of all of that, it just became a different situation for a lot of fans, not every fan, but it became a different situation where it was a little easier to let go based on the fact that it was in slow motion.
Yeah, but I would say, and I don't want to do too much of it, I told you so, but like even to get to that January 9th, Shams tweet, Shams report was kind of a slow motion thing because it's not like that last season was the first season where things weren't going well. It was the fourth season in a row where things weren't going the way that you had wanted them to. And I literally started writing about and talking about on this show, on the Jeff Calkins show and columns, the forces that might be leading to a Morant trade last summer, more than a year ago.
Yeah.
We were talking about that.
The analogy we were using on this podcast was we were talking about the car and the exit ramp.
That's right.
That's what we were. Go back. I don't know. Remember when we recorded that podcast? But we were talking about it before.
There was two things, and I reiterated them a little bit in what I wrote this week. But just to do it briefly, there was two things. One, there was the Bane trade, and the Bane trade was described by the team as an attempt to rebuild around Ja Morant and Jaren Jackson. I don't think that was a lie. I think that was a hope. But they knew when they did it, they were also starting to build an exit ramp. Like if that did not work out, we have started to lay the groundwork for this rebuild. So that was already in place. Then the other issue was Morant's contract. Morant last summer had 3 years left on a max contract. That's a lot. But I contended they were never going to get to the final year. Unlike with Dylan Brooks, they were not going to go into a lame duck final year of a contract situation with Ja Morant. That's too messy of a situation. And that there was basically a 2-year clock going back to last summer where they had to make a decision. Either we are going to extend this contract or we're going to trade Ja Morant. Now, they had 2 years at that point before you got to the point where you had to make a decision. And I think going into last season, there was still some hope that maybe they could make the extension decision, like they hadn't given up on it. And the way last season went, it sort of made the decision for them, I think, in their minds, with the way it went with the team, the way it went with Morant. And by January, at least, they clearly made the decision. Not only are we not comfortable doing an extension now, and I think we both believe Morant or Morant's camp had if not asked, at least expressed an interest in an extension, right?
Yes.
So that was out there as a topic for the team, that he wants this extension. We're not comfortable giving you this extension. Let's take it into the season. Let's see how the season goes. We saw how the season went in terms of his availability, his performance, and his attitude. And so they decided in January, maybe before, but at least in January, they communicated to him, to his camp. They communicated with each other. The decision was made. We are not comfortable doing this extension now, and we don't think we're going to get comfortable with it. And if the present is not working out and we don't see a path for a future, it's time to create a new future and rebuild. And so that decision was made in January, and it's unfortunate that it took from January until this week to fully execute it. But that's sort of what was happening.
I don't think that the lack of Ja having an agent had any impact on like trades and stuff like that.
Right.
I really don't think it did, because there's other players that don't have agents that if they hit the trade market, teams would line up for. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander being one of them. But typically,
I would say I don't think it was helpful, but for Ja in terms of the process, but I don't think it would have changed the process. It had no impact on the team's decision making.
But I would just note that like typically if a player goes into an extension setting, I'm just going to use, like, I'm just speaking broadly on sports right here. Without an agent, that typically, not all the time, but typically means that there's not much to negotiate.
That's right.
There's a belief that there is not much to negotiate. Because why would Shai Gilgeous-Alexander not need an agent? Because he's going to get a max contract.
Right.
Why does Lamar Jackson not need an agent? Because he's going to get a massive payday. Because they're MVP winners, right? Like those players have won MVPs and stuff. And so I'm not saying that this was the choice that was made on Ja's behalf, but at least just because I don't have the inside information to know that. I'm going to say that right here. But typically that's what happens, right? You don't have an agent because you don't think it's much of a debate, right? That you're just going to get a contract. And so maybe there was a belief that the contract was just going to happen. At the very least, we know that was some form of tension because you could see it play out over this last season, and you could just see how uncomfortable it got, especially when we were in Europe. And so, that's part of the story of it souring. I don't want the podcast or even our coverage to just be like totally about it souring, because there was a lot of good stuff to remember too.
Oh, sure.
Like there was a lot of fun, and I tried to capture that in my column, in which I wrote, and I don't know if you agree with this, but like for me, Ja was like a player that really gave a sense of place, because at all of those not key moments, but just like the most fun moments of the Ja time in Memphis, I could remember exactly where I was. Like I was at Tug's Sports Bar or whatever it was called on Mud Island when the Grizzlies won the lottery. And I remember being in Indiana that night vividly what the locker room looks like when he dunked on Jalen Smith, and that was like the dunk of all dunks that he had been waiting for. And the Malik Beasley jawbreaker game, and the San Antonio game with the 52 points. Like he was like the type of player that you remember where you were when he did this magic thing that you'd never seen on a basketball court before. And then in addition to that, like his celebrity grew so fast that it was like, we're in the zoo at the giraffe exhibit. We're in Europe, frankly, because of Ja Morant's stardom, and that's part of the reason why the NBA wants the Grizzlies in those games. I'm traveling to Dalzell, South Carolina, because he's a big enough deal. I mean, I wasn't even on the Grizzlies beat, and I got pulled off of the Tigers beat for them to say, hey, go to the NBA bubble, like, this guy's going to win Rookie of the Year, and we want somebody that will sit in a hotel room for 2 weeks.
Right.
And I did it. And so, like, Ja took us all these places, you know, whether it was just me or everyone else by proxy, by the photographs, by the videos. And his celebrity grew so much that was kind of what came – that was the first thing that came to mind for me when I thought about, like, the fun times of the Ja era. Is there like a singular play that stands out to you, or a singular game, or anything of that nature?
It's not so much a singular player game. It's the experience of watching him at his best, and that combination people talk about Ja in terms of the athleticism, right? You know, the donkey tips and some of that, and that's part of it. But to me, it was the combination of that with his feel for the game and the way he could control and manipulate the game. I mean, I think of a play early on against Houston in transition where he like manipulates everything for the layup, and Elliot Perry on the radio broadcast is like, oh,
Yeah,
you know,
that's right. I remember that one. That's a good one.
I think of that just the way I think of a game against Milwaukee. It wasn't. I don't think it was last season. Maybe it was the season before, but it was towards the back end, not the early end, where Giannis is like going off, but John Morant seems like the best player on the floor. I think in that game he had 14 assists, and 9 of them were for alley-oop dunks. One of them he's literally setting his butt on the court, throwing an alley-oop, pass to Santi Aldama. Yeah. The fact that he turned like the running alley-oop into a play I started tracking. Like, I mean, I wrote a column about how good the Grizzlies had become team running alley-oop. What's more fun in basketball than a running alley-oop, Yeah. And so I don't know if he was never the best player in the league, even at his best, but I'm not sure he wasn't the most enjoyable player to watch play basketball at his best. And I think that is there to summon in spurts. It had only been spurts for 4 years. Mm-hmm. And so I don't know how much of that he can get back and how much of he can sustain going forward. But it was a gift for a basketball fan to have a like up close ticket, whether you're in the arena or just, this is your local team, you're watching them on TV, to have a reason to watch all of that. And it's a shame we didn't see it more, that he only played,
if we did,
79 games of the last 3 seasons or whatever it was.
I mean, that's kind of why it's kind of at the center of some of this conversation, like from some of the folks that are upset that they made this decision, that they said, well, this was our box office guy. This is the guy. But that's got to happen on the court in FedEx Forum.
Here's the thing about the stardom stuff. I separate like the enjoyment of watching him play from the stardom. I understand there's value in the stardom and interest in the stardom.
There is.
I don't personally care about the stardom as much. I care about you're amazing.
But you recognize that people do care about that.
I do.
Yes.
But here's the problem with that. What does stardom mean in action to a franchise? Grizzlies have been near or at the bottom in attendance for the past few seasons, right?
Yeah.
The Grizzlies aren't selling shoes. They're selling tickets to basketball games. And so what does stardom mean if it's not on the court regularly, playing at an all-star level and selling tickets and winning games? That's what it came to for them. The stardom didn't mean that much to the Grizzlies in the end because it wasn't manifesting in a way that created wins and created ticket sales and created all of this for the franchise. Create social media impressions and social media conversations and shoe sales, but that's not what the Grizzlies are aiming for primarily. They're aiming for wins and ticket sales.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's the exact point that I was going to make. So it's now interesting that he goes to Portland because that's a fascinating place for him to go, given all of their guards. And
I don't think the Nike stuff has anything to do with it.
No,
but it is interesting that he's going to like Nike Town basically.
Yeah, that part of it is interesting. To me, it's more interesting just the makeup of the team because you've got a guy in Dame that takes like 20 shots a game who's coming back. You've got a player in Ja who takes like 20 shots a game who's coming back.
And needs the ball. Whether he's shooting or not, I think the greatest Ja Morant skill that's under-recognized is the passing vision, but he has to have the ball to do that.
Well, Dame and Ja almost work in opposite of each other, I think, a little bit, because as I was thinking about this, I'm like, okay, so what is Dame's skill? He's a scorer, primarily a shooter from the perimeter, which, okay, for Dame to be effective, he needs to be shooting the ball, right, from the perimeter, which means he's going to need to have the ball a lot to get those shots up. Then you have Ja. What's his skill? Attacking the basket and creating for others.
Well, to put a finer point on that, I'm sure Damian Lillard, I haven't looked at the numbers, I'm sure he's a good catch-and-shoot player, but he's mostly a pull-up jump shooter. That's really what he is.
So there's that. And then there's Ja, who also needs to have the ball, who also takes a lot of shots, like 20 shots a game. And he's not really the type of player that's going to play off the ball while Dame has the ball,
right?
Because he doesn't shoot the three very well. So...
And how many games are they going to play anyway?
Is it just going to be Dame primarily off the ball, waiting for Ja to attack and throw him a pass? because maybe that works, but like I just don't see that being the only way that they're going to be able to play.
Yeah.
And then on top of that, add in Denny Avdia, who
More
takes
of a slasher,
lot of shots,
yeah.
but also like goes to the free throw line a lot. So probably has more to do with their offense if you look at last year than what the box score just said.
Right.
So really, that's 3 guys that need to have the ball, and then that's before you get to Scoot Henderson and Drew Holiday. It's like it's a fascinating landing spot for Ja.
Well, and then you add on like the defense of that backcourt. You got Donovan Clingan behind it, which is good, but you add the defense of that backcourt, and you add how many games they're going to play. It's interesting. I mean, there's a lot of potential for that team, but there's a lot of volatility with that team, clearly. Yeah.
Anything else before we move on from Ja here?
I don't think so. You were talking about, like, you know, the one thing you made me think about, you're talking about, like, what you remembered. I do a thing, and I haven't updated it in a couple seasons. I'm really due. I need to update it as we go into a new era, this thing called the Grizzlies Glossary. And, like, I bet, like, when I did that Grizzlies 25 list last year, I had Marc Gasol and Zach Randolph as the top 2. I think deservedly, obviously. But if you control F that Grizzlies Glossary doc, it's going to be John Morant and Tony Allen. Like, in terms of who has supplied the most memorable stuff, the most cultural stuff, the most franchise lore, you know, who has added the most to the lingo of the team. It's really those 2 guys.
The Grizzlies aren't going to have that. I don't know. Like, Cam Boozer. We
got the Tater Tot King, Drew.
They have the Tater Tot King. Sure. Tater Tot King probably.
I got to add that to the glossary.
Finishing 5th in MVP.
Beef stew can now go into the glossary.
Beef stew can go into the glossary.
Yeah.
But my point is more so that
it's gonna be different.
You have. I wrote this in the column. You have Ja exiting, who for 7 years was the face of the franchise, who was the guy that made the franchise cool, who even when he wasn't playing was always relevant to the national conversation, that kept the Grizzlies in the conversation. You're now replacing him with an 18-year-old kid who has as good of a resume for an 18-year-old basketball player as you will ever find.
Yep.
And is in national TV commercials and stuff already. Is used to the fame.
If you watched the NCAA tournament, you saw a lot of Cam Boozer on commercials.
But he has a totally different, to use the term everybody uses now, aura. Mm-hmm. The aura to Cam Boozer is way different than the aura to Ja Morant. And so that is going to be definitely a change, I think, for the Grizzlies. And it's just...
But it's a change to something specific and significant, which is, I think, a great boon to the franchise, right? You're not trading Ja Morant, moving out of that era into an unknown. You're into, like, something different, but something, like, really significant. It's sort of like when you moved out of the other era into Ja Morant.
Right. No, and it happened quickly, and this one's going to happen quickly. We'll see what kind of player Cam Boozer is on the floor, and Summer League is coming up. I could transition there. There's one other thing I just wanted to bring up.
Yeah.
I got a lot of texts from friends of mine locally that are Grizzlies fans after the Ja news. What do you think? What do you think? Whatever. I got a text from one friend who said, I just finished listening to the Ryan Russillo podcast. I don't know if you listened to that. It was like 15-minute long bonus pod.
No.
And he basically said he thinks Ja's the most delusional player in the NBA.
Okay. I mean, there may be some competition, but sure. Okay.
He said Ben Simmons handed that off to Ja. And I think he meant it like, I mean, it was obviously insulting a little bit of what he said. But his point was essentially, and I'm paraphrasing on all of this, that no player's understanding of where they think they are versus where they actually are in the league is a further gap than Ja Morant at 26 years old.
I think that's been a major tension of the last few seasons, yeah.
I do think that's a major tension. How far of a gap do you think that is right now? Can you know without really knowing where Ja's head is at?
I mean, I am of the belief, and I've written and said this, that
because listen, for Portland to do this trade, they have to believe that gap is not as wide as someone like a national podcaster like him would say.
Yeah, I mean, I think they saw it as a quote unquote buy low. You know, I mean, they traded Jeremy Grant. Well, maybe we should get into that a little bit. Maybe what they got back. Jeremy Grant's a useful player, but on a contract that's probably twice the size of what anyone would give him if he were a free agent. So they saw it as a buy low opportunity, much like the Grizzlies did once upon a time when they brought in Zach Randolph, who had a checkered career in Portland and was roughly the same age as John Morant, maybe even older when he came into Memphis. I've written and I've said, and I believe that Morant still has within him, talent-wise, all-star seasons, plural, to summon. That would not surprise me. I think that is there. Whether you can find it or you can stay on the court enough, it's a really open question. But I do think, there's been a huge gap between the idea of John Morant and the reality of John Morant for going on 4 years now, and that's a long time for there to be that kind of gap.
All right, let's move on. Let's talk real quick a little bit about Summer League because it will have started by the time we record our next podcast. Who are you most excited to see? Obviously Cam. Outside of Cam Boozer, who are you most excited to see?
Coward, who apparently is going to play. And again, you don't want to put too much into a few Summer League games, especially for a guy who's already a pro. I'm really interested in Coward going into next season. I think there could be a real leap as a scorer for him in year 2. I don't know how much Summer League will tip off there, but whenever you have a guy who's going into year 2, going into Summer League and has already been good, you sort of expect them to really pop in a Summer League setting. I guess that's an obvious one. Kareem Lopez is a little bit of a man of mystery. I mean, I haven't seen him that much. I don't. You haven't. Most people haven't, and I don't really know what to think about him in terms of on the team next season. Like, I don't really have expectations for him next season. I have expectations for Cam Boozer to be the starting power forward for the Memphis Grizzlies on opening night. I have zero expectations for Kareem Lopez.
Yeah, I'm interested. I'm interested in what they'll do with Kareem Lopez. What sort of roles they'll put him in.
Right.
Because the last Summer League, Islo talked a lot about how this was going to be a lot of just experimenting, basically, that they were just trying to find hidden skill sets, and he's mentioned that quite a bit. And so I think, like with Boozer, they're going to obviously let him play on the ball and see what he can do, but they're also going to put him in different spots. So we'll see some of that. And then with Lopez, I have no idea what they're going to do with him.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of interested to see that. Coward as well. I imagine Coward will
more quietly.
Yeah.
Javon Small.
Yeah.
Because they have Javon Small under contract or control or however for a two-way again next season. I think that is the current assumption. He'll be back on a two-way next season. But they have all these other guards on the main roster. It's a crowded situation. But he was really impressive as a rookie, late second-round pick last year.
Yeah. I also don't know.
What kind of case is he going to make for himself?
Yeah, he was. He was good, especially towards the end of the year. And because of the logjam at guards, like who else is going to be on the Summer League? Is Walter Clayton going to be on the Summer League
I'm guessing yes on Clayton. I'm guessing no, on Spencer and Pippen. That'd be my guess. Taylor Hendricks, I think, might be on this. I don't know if they said that.
I would guess no on Hendricks.
Right, I'm going to guess yes. We got to disagree on something.
We don't have the.
They have not put out a roster.
It's not typical for a fourth-year player to play Summer League. I mean, Gigi Jackson's 21. Right. Is he going to be on the? No,
I don't think
so.
No.
Because he's a fourth-year player. Same thing with Hendricks.
Yeah, Carson Cooper, Jemai Mashak.
Carson Cooper's, I can't tell you much about him.
Right.
I didn't watch a ton of Michigan State last year, so it will be interesting to see him. And you know who I'm really excited to see play? Yuki Kawamura.
Who's he playing for?
Kawamura will be playing for the Indiana
Who he play
Pacers. For? The Indiana Pacers.
Okay.
And I wore my Dabu Dori. If you're watching the video pod, you got this. This was a gift from our friends. Dabu Dori, Japanese basketball magazine. Dabu Dori is double dribble in Japanese. And, so I'm excited to get out there and see Yuki play for the Pacers, as well as just like some of the other games. I'm interested to see if Ja's out there for the Trailblazers games. He might be.
Giving Yang Hansen some tips. Yeah.
Maybe. He
Working
might be.
on some pick and roll
He was
technique.
out there last year, remember, for Grizzlies Summer League, so it'll be interesting to see if he's out there.
That'll be something worth keeping an eye on. Like, is Zach Edey going to be there?
Yeah, there will be guys that go out and support. I would guess. I mean, there always has been for the Grizzlies. And then the off-season workouts are usually taking place in Vegas, and the whole staff is, like, there. So, like the players, what I mean by that is the players that travel out to Vegas to watch, they're not going to like stop working out. Like they're just there. Like they have the facilities and stuff. So, Yeah, it's going to be a fun summer league. I'm looking forward to it. The schedule sucks. How about that?
Did you see how crappy
the schedule sucks? The first game is on the 4th of July, which is fine if you're a viewer and you're like, hey, I'm going to do a little fireworks, friends, and booze, and you're just going to do the get the Cameron Boozer experience on the 4th of July, the first game. That's fine. But then they play the 4th, they play the 6th, the 7th, they have the 5th off. Then they play again on the 10th in Vegas, but they don't play either of the days after that. So the Grizzlies are going to go through the middle of the summer league schedule, and they're going to play one game in 5 days. And it's going to be totally backloaded. By then, some of the excitement for summer league will be
because it really starts to dissipate towards the back end of Vegas.
So I don't like that, to be honest with you. I think that kind of stinks, but I know for a fact those Salt Lake City games will be pretty fun, at least the ones that the main guys play in. So looking forward to that. There's a Boozer versus Peterson matchup on the way. There's also a Boozer versus Wilson matchup on the way on national TV Summer League. So that would be great. All right,
we have breaking news on the pod.
We do.
It won't be breaking news to listeners, but for us, Walker Kessler is going to be signed and traded from the Utah Jazz to the Los Angeles Lakers. How about that? That's quasi-Grizzlies related in all kinds of ways.
By the way, he showed up in L.A. yesterday. Did you see that? Some TMZ or somebody nabbed him at the airport and was asking him questions. So there you go. The Lakers got their center. Luka got the center he was asking for.
There was a lot of talk of the Jazz maybe taking Boozer at 2 if they were going to lose Kessler and you play Jaren at the 5. Well, now they didn't draft Boozer and they've lost Kessler, so are they going to play Jaren at the 5? Are we going to have a Jaren at the 5, Lauri Markkanen at the 4 in
That's
Utah?
That's probably what's going to happen.
It's interesting for the Grizzlies also because the Grizzlies have the Lakers pick in 2027, and they have this three-way best of the 3 with Utah, Minnesota, and Cleveland. So it's sort of sort of goes both ways. You've hurt the value of the Lakers pick maybe with them getting Kessler, but maybe you've helped the value of that Utah pick. Of course, the Utah pick now can't be number 1 anyway, as
both
we know.
Both of them are protected.
Yeah.
Okay, real quick, let's go speed round.
Okay.
Before we get out of here, where's LeBron going to go? My guess is Warriors.
It feels like that was sort of out there from the jump when you had Draymond Green opt out, but it sounds like the Anthony Davis thing's not going to happen. I'll say Warriors. I mean, it seems like even though he said we're talking to every team, how about this guy?
Okay.
It still feels like it's Warriors, Heat, or Cavs, right? Can Pat Riley talk him in to come in to play with Giannis and finishing up back in Miami? That wouldn't shock me. Hey, LeBron can play point guard for this team, but I think Warriors is probably right.
What's going to happen with KCP, you think?
I wrote yesterday that they have
explain why his contract is interesting. I guess let's start there.
Well, I don't know how interesting it is. It's an expiring. He opted into it. It's $21.6 million for next season on an expiring. They're at 18 players. I think this is right. If the regular season started today and the Grizzlies just had to get down to a normal roster. They don't have to do this today, but if they did, in theory, I think what would happen would be obviously you cut Taj Gibson, who's non-guaranteed anyway. I think you cut Chris Murray, who you just came in from Portland, who's 1 year left at $5 million, and I think you cut Kentavious Caldwell-Pope. You try to get Richie Saunders on a 2-way, and now you're done. I think that's what they would do if it started today. With the KCP thing, I think you would hope you could negotiate a buyout with him, and so you shave off some of that 21.6. I think he is a player who will be on a roster in the NBA next season, and so you can kind of like game that out and subtract whatever he's about to get from another team from the contract you have and do a buyout. Now that we're early in free agency, you wonder. A lot of times what happens with these things is agents are actively – this happened with Cole Anthony last year in the Grizzlies. And Cole Anthony could not find a good landing spot for more than the minimum, and the Grizzlies ended up having to pay out more. If Cole Anthony had found a better landing spot, they would have gotten a better buyout with Cole Anthony. My guess would be the same thing that happened with Cole Anthony a year ago is happening with Kentavious Caldwell-Pope now, where his agent is looking around trying to figure out, okay, the Grizzlies are going to cut you or buy you out one way or another, or they're going to trade you, but I'm looking for your next landing spot. and the agent will find a landing spot, and based on the landing spot, this is educated guesswork. Based on the landing spot the agent finds, there'll be a negotiation with the Grizzlies about how he exits the Grizzlies. It could be the Grizzlies paying out the whole $21.6 million. Could be the Grizzlies paying out less than that on a buyout. I guess it could be a trade, but I kind of doubt it will be a trade given the size of the contract.
Okay.
Hopefully that made sense.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. And, that I just felt like we should note that because I did see some people being like, well, with the Grizzlies still have an expiring out there in Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, they could theoretically use that to do more stuff on the trade market.
I think a thing that's hovering behind a lot of stuff right now with the Grizzlies is I think they have an eye on summer of 2027. And the deal they did with Ja cut about $8 million off their books for 2027. I don't think they're going to do a deal that brings in salary for 2027 unless it's a player they really want, and B, they get paid really well to do it. Like I'll give you an example. Like the Nuggets probably need to shave some money. They have this guy Zeke Naji, he's a backup center, who makes like $8 million this year, next year. The Grizzlies could take that money into their space and get paid for it. But if the Denver's not giving them a first-round pick, I don't think they want to add that money because I think they got an eye on trying to do maybe what the Lakers just did. The Lakers just used their cap space not to sign Walker Kessler, but to try to force the Jazz into a sign and trade to get them Walker Kessler. Who knows what will happen a year from now? But you look out into the future. Who could be a restricted free agent next summer? Cason Wallace of OKC, Anthony Black of Orlando, Amin Thompson, Asar Thompson, Keontae George, Ryan Rollins of Milwaukee. I think the Grizzlies are going to keep an eye out on can we make a move for a major player next summer, and they're not going to do things this summer that will make that harder next summer, would be my guess.
Who's the leading scorer from Summer League? I will say Cam Boozer. I think it's close between Cam and Cedric.
I don't know if Cedric plays enough, right? And plus, what if it's one and
out?
Well,
they're both not playing every game. Come on.
Yeah, but Cedric could be like a 1-2 games and I'm done situation. Like that happens sometimes with those guys.
Smaller sample size might give you a better chance at being the top. I don't mean total. I mean average. Who's going to average the most points?
I don't. If Cam Spencer were playing, that's who I would pick, but he's not going to play. I don't know if there's a real bucket getter out there. I think it's more of a different kind of basketball. I will go. So we can disagree on something else. I'm gonna say Javon Small shocks the world. Has a big summer league.
The summer league games are closer to the college games, which are more dominated by the guards. So that I like that pick. That's a good pick. I'm for the fun of it gonna take Cam Boozer. All right, that'll do it for us this week. Anything? There's more to life than basketball. Sorry.
Man, I wish there was more to life than basketball.
I don't have a lot going on.
That's the way it feels.
I don't have a lot going on. We've been watching Love Island in our house. So terrible, crappy reality TV. And so I've been paying my dues on that. And other than that, I don't have a lot going on. I came back from the draft, and I'm a little under the weather, so I've been just chilling.
My daughter was complaining to my wife that my wife is not watching Love Island because she wanted to compare notes on Love Island. Right. Maybe I should send her your way. She can compare notes with you on Love Island.
Out. I would be so uncomfortable watching. She must be a really cool mom.
Yeah,
because
she's a pretty cool mom.
It would be really uncomfortable to watch Love Island with my mom. Let's just put it that way. So don't send her my way. I don't.
I've never watched Love Island.
I
will never watch Love
either.
Island. I have negative interest in Love Island.
Who loves Love Island is Jaren Jackson. He used to talk about Love Island in the locker room all the time, and that was the one positive was that I could always compare. I could always tell Jaren that I was watching, because this is, like I said, this is what I do. I watch Love Island for 6 weeks. It's a 6-week show. I watch it for 6 weeks so that when football comes around, there can be no complaining from my wife in my house that football is on the TV.
Is Love Island weekly?
It's daily.
Daily?
It's the only days it is not on TV is Wednesday and Saturday.
Daily?
Wow,
daily. That's rough. I don't know about that.
It's like a live that they like recap what has happened over the last 24 hours every 24 hours.
I'll give a third in a row and final Daily Memphis Grizzlies podcast. Shout out to my good friend Adam Remsen,
who just keeps winning.
No, yesterday. Well, he lost yesterday.
I know, but he won 12 in a row.
He won 12 in a row. He lost on his 13th match. He lost, as I said last night, I can't believe this dude won 12 Jeopardy matches and then lost on a final Jeopardy question that I knew. Exodus, Leon Uris, I would have gotten that one right. He missed that one to lose. 13 in a row. He is, I think he told me 17th. When I say all time, like they didn't start letting people win more than 5 in a row until the early 2000s, and so since then they've opened it up. I think he's like the 17th longest streak or something like that. He is considered a super champion. That's official Jeopardy lingo. If you win 10 matches, he's a super champion. He is also considered the Tennessee champion. He is the record for most wins from a contestant from Tennessee. So shout out to Adam on an amazing run on Jeopardy. 12-time Jeopardy champion, my guy.
I mean, that's a lot of cash, 12 times in a row.
It's a lot of cash.
He owes you a dinner or something.
We actually had lunch yesterday, and we went Dutch. So I should have made him pick it up. He has not gotten the check yet, so he doesn't have that money in hand quite yet. But maybe next time he'll pay.
That's funny. Yeah, congrats, Adam. All right, now we're out for Drew and for Chris. See you later.